Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending yet another event of EHPA, this time under the umbrella of the Renewable Heating and Cooling European Technology and Innovation Platform, something that a platform hopefully that you know a lot about. If not, you will find out in the next few minutes. Thank you for attending this. Hopefully it will be interesting. This will be, just to tell you a little bit about the agenda. It will start with a presentation about the platform and the different things that you can participate in the platform. There are many opportunities for this platform, and as you can see now in the slide, you can even use your mobile phone and scan that QR code and it will take you directly to the website. Again, there are many opportunities, and today we will be focusing on Portugal. These are a series of national roundtables that are done by EHPA and our partners in the project. These are focusing on information about a particular country. So we had Ireland, we had Lithuania, we had Greece just very recently, a few weeks ago, and now it's Portugal. The goal of the project is to have these national roundtables for as many countries from the European Union as possible. Well, I would say stay tuned to the website, because there are many such national roundtables that are coming up. And in case you are interested in a particular country, it might be the case that the event already took place. So it might be that you actually have the event taking place and the recording is already available on YouTube, for example. So with that being out of the way, just a little quick summary of my presentation. So just a little bit about the RHC platform. Just a little bit about how you can take part in this, because it's more about, how can you contribute, how can you take advantage of the different events and the different opportunities that this project presents. Then a little bit about the EHPA Research and Innovation Committee, because as you will see, the project has a certain structure, and each organization is kind of merging the opportunities that they have with the project structure, and then a lot of activities that we do in the area of heat pumps. So what is the RHC platform? So like I said, it's a European technology and innovation platform since 2016. This means that it showcases the advantages that renewable energy technologies for heating and cooling have. So again, it's not just heat pumps, it's also district heating and cooling. It's also about biomass. It's also about solar thermal. So a lot of different technologies and a lot of data gathering that you will see in different documents. So what are the RHC goals? We try to develop working relationships with other national and regional platforms, so other European technology and industrial platforms, for example. We try to establish different documents, such as the strategic research and innovation agendas, such as a vision to 2050 to 100% renewable heating and cooling. We try to identify subjects and priorities that are cross-cutting in nature, for example, education and training or socioeconomic aspects. We want to identify and at least flag, if not as well offer solution to the barriers that we and our experts see in the different aspects of innovation. And all of this is done with the always keeping in touch with the European Union institutions. So all these documents that you can see in the next slide. So the documents that we've completed the one with about the vision that you can see on the website. We've completed the general strategic research and innovation agenda, while each organization is working on their own particular research and strategic research and innovation agenda. that you will find out just a little bit later. And now we're actually talking about the next step, or the next for us major piece of the puzzle would be the deployment. So we have a vision. We know what needs to be researched. We know what needs to be developed. And now we want to know how can we actually deploy this technology en masse to meet the different policy objectives. The first part where you can take a part, let's say, is to share your opinion on this. So there's already a survey that is running, and you can see on the screen now. Again, you can share the QR code and it will take you directly to the survey. So if you have an interest in this, and probably you do because you are attending this, and you would like to share your opinion about the different steps that you see would need to be taken to increase the mass deployment of different renewable heating and cooling technologies, then by all means, we very much would welcome you to take part in this survey. This survey is just the first step in gathering this information, and it will be completed by a co-creation workshop that will take place on the 17th of June, with the registration starting quite soon. And again, that will be another chance to share your opinion, because the co-creation workshop will be not just presentations or panel discussions, but it will also have different breakout rooms that everyone can take a part on, and everyone can discuss, share their opinion, and have their opinion included in this document. Moreover, something that might be of interest to you is the RHC projects database. This is a database that is managed by us, by EHPA, and is freely available on the RHC website. You can see in the next slide how it looks like. So basically, it just gathers a lot of projects from the renewable heating and cooling sector. But its advantage is that it's easily filterable. So basically, if you want to know something about heat pumps, the projects that are using heat pumps that are in the area of buildings that have a certain TRL, you can easily do that just by using the very simple filter option. We have around, as of yet, around 120 projects listed there. A great advantage, I would say, is that you can submit your own project. It takes probably around 5 minutes to submit the project, because basically, as you're running the project, there are very few things that you need to fill in. Then very fast, after just a small evaluation that all the criteria are met, that the project is actually relevant to the database, the project will be published and you will join the RHC community. This database we aim to steadily increase, and we've been increasing every week with a few projects, but I would say every 6 months we take a look on the new projects that are funded by the EU, and we add them there. I hope that when we continue this project in the next years, is that we will continue to add upon it. So that means that in 2-3 years, what we have now, 120 projects, might be 300 that are easily sortable, and the information is quite easily digestible and of use. Now, another opportunity is to just become a member of the platform. And then you have actually a lot of advantages, because you can participate in all the, well, you can see on screen, and when you will receive the follow-up package, you will also receive this presentation, so you can actually click the link. But if not, you can just go on the website and you can learn more about being a member of the platform, being an expert, what this means as part of opportunities for you, what are the meetings that are taking place, what are the different horizontal working groups, what are the different technology panels. So quite a lot of opportunities. Then just a little bit about the, our Research and Innovation Committee. Basically, as I said, the platform itself is divided into certain horizontal working groups, for example, talking about buildings or talking about industries. And also, there are technology panels. So there's a technology panel on biomass, or there's a technology panel on solar thermal. And of course, there's a technology panel on heat pumps. Now for EHPA, in our case, we combined this, this technology panel with our Research and Innovation Committee. This means that if you're part of one, you're basically part of both. The Research and Innovation Committee, basically, you can see on screen now, its background, as well as its aims. If if you would like to join this, the application is very easy. You just have to email me. Dan, that's stefanik@ehp.org. And you can find out more about this. The meetings are always online. We have a set of about 70 stakeholders from all around Europe, but also from outside. And we meet, I would say, about every 3.5 months. There's a meeting that lasts about 2 hours. And basically, we talk a lot about the upcoming projects that we aim to participate in, about having consortiums, about the next research and innovation things that are happening, a lot of information about the RHC that you will find out about, and basic information just about the research and innovation that are going on in the heat pump sector. Now, just to give you an example, what we're working on and we will complete very soon is the heat pump technology panel strategic research and innovation agenda that is based on a heat pump life cycle that you can see below, sorry, you can see on the slide. And each of them, you can see in the next slide. So for example, demand, we gathered this data from a lot of places and a lot of stakeholder interactions, and each of them has a certain structure. So you can learn more about these types of documents or these types of work when you participate in this. So enough about that, and believe me, it is a lot to talk about. I would strongly encourage you to check out the RHC website. Again, a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, right? Because I like to talk more about opportunities than what we would ask of you, right? What also is offered if you're a stakeholder. And so let's go to the second part of this webinar, which is the panel discussion and the panelists that we have today. So that was the single part that was using a presentation, and hopefully it was of use to you, and hopefully for the ones that didn't know about RHC, now you know more about it. So now just a short introduction of the panelists that we have here today with us. So first, in no particular order, it's Anna Isabel Palmero, Marrero. Yeah, I said to the panelists, I may mispronounce some things. So I had already apologized before. So she's a senior researcher at the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Porto. And she's also an invited auxiliary professor lecturing at both undergraduate and postgraduate courses. Her research activities are related to solar energy systems, thermal and photovoltaic, energy and buildings, and pole generation technologies. She was involved in several European research projects funded through the Joule and ENERGY programs concerning sustainable energy systems, such as Real Coop, Power Sol, Solar Louvre, and Geo-Atlantic. She has published more than 50 scientific papers in books, international journals, and conferences. She has reviewed papers for several scientific journals. She's a member of several scientific committees and conferences, as well as in the international conferences on energy and environmental research, also known as ICEER. So, hello, Anna, and welcome to the panel discussion.
Hello, Dan. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to participate to this webinar, and thank you for introduction of myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist is João Castanheira. He is a deputy CEO at ENGIE Portugal and also CEO at Climaespaco, a subsidiary of ENGIE in charge of building and operating the Lisbon District Heating and Cooling System. Vice President at EFIEES, the European Federation of Intelligent Energy Efficiency Services, and member of the Board of Directors at Cogen Portugal. With a career of 25 years in the energy sector, João was previously member of the Board of Directors at EDP GAS, Distribuição, and officer at ADENE, the Portuguese National Energy Agency. João has graduated from mechanical engineering and is specialized in energy by IST, Instituto Superior Técnico. So, hello, João. Welcome and thank you for being here today.
Hello, Dan. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation. And it's really a pleasure to join you here today.
Pleasure having you. Our third panelist is Pedro Ribeiro. He is the VP of Engineering at the Center of Engineering of Bosch in Aveiro, graduating from FCTUC with a degree in mechanical engineering. Pedro has been working at Bosch for 20 years. Since August 2017, leading more than 200 talented engineers in the Center of Engineering at Bosch Termotecnologia in Aveiro, where solutions for Internet of Things and appliances are developed for the universe of HVAC Bosch products. Previously, working abroad for 10 years and leading different engineering teams in China and Turkey on the sector of gas appliances development. Also being a board member of the Heat Pumps Business Unit located in Sweden, responsible for engineering and project management. So, thank you, Pedro. Welcome.
Hi, Dan. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's a pleasure, of course, being here. And I use also the opportunity to say hello to the participants that are with us today. And hopefully will be interesting discussions during these 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pedro. And lastly, Zenaida Sobral Moral. She's a senior researcher in sustainable energy systems and head of energy unit at INEGI. She has a PhD in chemistry and an executive master's in sustainable energy systems. Before joining INEGI, she worked as an associate researcher at the engineering department of the University of Cambridge, and as a visiting researcher at the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, where she analyzed the impacts of the UK energy system decarbonization pathways on wider natural resource management and use, i.e. water and land and air quality. She joined INEGI in June 2017, where she is managing a team of junior and senior researchers working on projects in energy and health, including investigating the connections between building energy use and healthy indoor environments, sustainable energy use in industry, and planning of local energy systems. She's the coordinator of several EU-funded Horizon 2020 projects, one of them being something very interesting and I hope she will talk more about this, the project called Embers, which aims to develop an open source tool to aid industries in identifying opportunities and business models for waste heat, cold recovery and utilization. Since the beginning of 2020, she also teaches courses on environment, energy demand, and planning of sustainable energy systems at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. So, welcome, Zenaida.
Thank you, Dan. It's really good to be here, and I'm looking forward to participating in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, with that short introduction, if I can call it that, as you can see, because the panelists have such a wide experience as well as such a diverse skill set. We will start with the panel discussion. We have some questions that we've already prepared together. But if you have, as an attendee, if you have a question at any time, please use the chat option, and I think some of you have already found that. So please use the chat option to ask your question. And if you want the question to be addressed to a panelist in particular, please also tag their name, or make sure you use their name so we know which panelist this question was addressed. So, and again, we've been doing a lot of these national roundtables. I would start with just a question for Anna, just to know more about the renewable energy and the impact of renewable energies in Portugal. What was the impact in recent years? And I will also ask the panelists, all of them, to turn their cameras on, please. And again, this is a discussion, so please feel free to add upon it.
Okay. About the impact of renewable energy in Portugal in recent years, it's very important to know the Renewable Energy Roadmap 21 scheduled for 2020, and for the world European Union, a share of energy from renewable source of 20%. Some countries, such as Portugal, have already reach or surpassed such a target. In the fact, the current energy situation in Portugal has significantly has changed in the last decade. Just a little bit, just to say some numbers about this. Portugal was the fourth country of the European Union with a higher incorporation of renewable electricity in 2018, after Denmark, Austria, and Sweden. In 2019, the contribution of renewable energy source to final energy consumption, including non-energy consumption, was 29%. It's very important to know about it, because renewable energy is a lot of different concept or different aspect. In the case of Portugal, when I say in 2019 the 29% of the final energy consumption is renewable energy, but it's very important which type of renewable energy. The 43% of this renewable energy source had origin in biomass. The 14% is in hydroelectric, 14%, 20% in wind power. Heat pumps, we have now we have a good value, but okay, it's not very big compared with other countries in Europe. In this year, heat pumps and biofuels contributed 13% and 60% respectively. This is in general, but Portugal is a small country, but have different renewable sources depend on the part of the country. For example, in Alentejo, this is in the south, but it's middle south. In the last year, in 2020, was responsible about the 48% of the national photovoltaic production. The geothermal, for example, the geothermal production here in Portugal is very important, but just in Azores Island, and the production represents about the 26% of the electricity consumed in this island. For that, it's very important to know. In Portugal, we have renewable energy, but for different sources. Here in the north, it's very important, the hydroelectric, and wind power, yes, of course. For that, it's just more or less the numbers about the renewable energy in Portugal in this last year, okay?
That's very interesting. And I always like to hear about numbers and about the different technologies and their share. And as Anna said, hopefully this transition is accelerating, like as it was in the case of heat pumps. But talking about the technology as well and how it is implemented, I would like to ask João about the role that district heating and cooling, and what is its role in Portugal, and how can it be, let's say, maybe replicated in other southern European countries, or what are the particularities of district heating and cooling in southern European countries?
Thank you, Dan. Well, I would say that district heating and cooling has for sure an important role to play in heating and cooling. I would say even more in cooling than in heating, but it's not yet the case. I have to say it's not yet the case. I will give you a few examples of the potential that we have for this type of technology, but I will start with a general comment about the situation in Portugal. I would say that normally people don't speak too much about DHC in Portugal. And sometimes when the administration and the politicians speak about district heating and cooling, which is very rare, by the way, they say wrong things, like, for example, we don't need that in Portugal, that's something for Central or for Northern Europe. And this is totally wrong, because in fact we do have a heating demand, heating needs in Portugal. Of course, not as much as in Central or Northern Europe, but we do have heating needs in Portugal, and we do have a lot of cooling needs in Portugal and in other Southern Europe countries, and it's growing needs, in fact. And on top of that, I would say that we have the resources, we have the local resources. So I always say that it's silly to burn gas, for example. It's just an example. It's silly to burn gas to heat a building when nearby there is a factory throwing waste to the environment, for example. It's a mistake, and one day we'll be ashamed of this. I would say, why does this happen? This happens because normally, if there is no one thinking the city at a larger scale, each investor thinks about only his own building. So it doesn't think about a common solution like district heating and cooling. And let me give you a few examples of where we can apply the district heating and cooling in Portugal or in other Southern Europe countries. For example, the first example I gave is about waste heat from an industrial facility. It can be a cement plant, a glass factory, a power plant, an incinerator, a CHP, whatever. So the resource is there. The demand normally is around. So you just have to draw a pipe. You just have to put a pipe and to take this waste heat to the buildings around. You cannot do it on a standalone approach, building by building, but you can have a district approach, and you can start connecting the buildings around the source. That's just one example. Another example, it's especially interesting, for example, for small and medium-sized cities in forest areas. You know that Portugal has a lot of problems with forest fires. So we need to reduce the risk of fires. We need to I would say, to foster the local economy instead of just bringing their gas and electricity. So why don't we just use the residual biomass to feed small-scale district heating systems or district cooling systems? So the potential is there. We just have to use it. Another example, and I could give you much more. Another example, Anna said already that we are not Iceland, so we do not have a lot of geothermal energy in Portugal, but we have some in Azores, like Anna said. And we have other cities, for example, like Chaves in the northern part of the country, where we have geothermal resource. So why don't we just put the hot water on pipes and we take it to the buildings? It's silly to burn gas or to use electricity to heat our houses when we have the local resources there to use. And that you can do with a district approach. So it's not easy to do it building by building, but if you start building a small district heating system, starting to connect a few buildings and then growing layer by layer, then you can use this type of solutions in a smart way.
That sounds great, and thank you so much for the examples. And I think when we talked before, Zenaida, you were talking about the opportunities of wasted thermal energy in local energy systems, and you also talked about how can industry play a more active role in the energy system. So not only as a user of energy, but also as a source of heating and cooling. So I think.
Yeah, so it's a really good introduction by João Castanheira, which I think is a really good segue into the project that we are involved in. So João is also one of the partners so the Climaespaco is one of the case studies we're looking into. And it's precisely rethinking the role of the industry. And it's not only industry, but industry is one of the main, let's say, could be one of the main suppliers of that excess thermal energy. Of course, we know that when we burn fossil fuels to produce heat, we do have a very big loss. So in terms of the conversion, and this is a resource that's basically being wasted into the environment. So whether in wastewater or in the exhaust systems, or even being just dispersed within the different processes within the industrial systems. And so there is already, at least there have been a couple of really big projects mapping all of this availability of excess thermal energy throughout Europe. And actually could provide for most of the heating, at least heating needs in most countries in Europe, and in Portugal certainly that would be the case. And we have some sectors like, for example, the cement industry, or the foundries, so metal producing, metal forming, and also within waste incinerators. And definitely also the pulp industry. So these are industries that have a really huge potential in terms of the available thermal energy, but also on the, let's say, flip side is that they also have very huge costs in terms of energy. And that's also, let's say, an incentive from the side of these industries to try to recover that wasted thermal energy. And then potentially what we are doing within the Embers project is looking, okay, so once you've recovered that wasted thermal energy, what can you do with it? So how can you look at it in terms of a system? So, and then you can explore options, let's say, of reusing and optimizing your own processes within the industry, but looking beyond that. So looking at what other industries in your neighbors, so maybe you're a part of an industrial park. So who else needs potentially energy at a certain temperature? And so you can look at those options. And as João was describing, looking beyond, let's say, just the industrial sector, and then integrating industries into what is the wider energy system, local energy systems, and looking at options of sharing that heat through district heating with other sectors. It could be buildings, both residential and commercial buildings, as well as, for example, within agriculture, you have greenhouses that need also heat, and it might be providing also for those for that sector. So for greenhouses. And of course, we have these big, so we have other big potential sectors which have this potential for wasted thermal energy. So you have supermarkets, which basically also have a potential of providing a heat at a very reasonable temperature to be integrated into district heating networks. And in there, you might combine it with heat pumps or not, if you want to upgrade the heat to a certain level. And also data centers. So data centers are becoming ubiquitous in our also, let's say, urban tissue, and part of our urban infrastructure. And so some countries and some projects are looking specifically at the potential for waste heat from data centers to be used also in district heating, in district heating, and to provide that to neighboring buildings in the neighbor of the data centers. And we have one, actually, the new supercomputer that's being built in Braga. So we are helping them actually look into the options of capturing that excess heat and then using it within a district heating network within the university campus to actually provide that, use that heat to provide for the heating needs of the neighboring buildings. So I don't know if I covered enough, but basically, if you have a way of at least looking into what are these options that you might have in the neighboring region of your industry, then I think that's definitely, and looking into specifically how you can share these through district heating networks, I think it would be a step forward in a way that we could incorporate it, because you're always going to have wasted energy, whatever you use. So whether you use renewables or fossil sources is even worse, because then of course there is this whole environmental burden. But even if you use renewable sources, you still have times in which you cannot use the full, let's say, availability of your resource. And of course, you can also integrate, so you can look into options of integrating this with thermal storage, and then all other sorts of technologies that can either promote your, let's say, excess heat to another temperature or to another quality.
Yep, indeed. And here at EHP, we talk a lot about waste heat. We actually call it, we wanted to be included in circular energy, because waste heat kind of gives the wrong impression that it's something wasted, or at least call it recovered heat, because a lot of it can be recovered and is recovered. And we do have a lot of projects trying to recover the heat. And you touched upon most of the applications that we are looking into, or we do have projects on. And you also touched upon the uses of heat pumps, and Pedro knows a lot about heat pumps, and I would ask him, how do heat pumps fit for the use cases in Portugal, and how do the Portuguese consumers see heat pumps as a heating and cooling solution, from your opinion and experience?
I would start from the second question, and definitely heat pump technology is known in Portugal. Yes, if we look for air conditioning is a strong product sold in the market. Reasons are, of course, driven also from the cooling side, but as offers both solutions, is one product well present in the market. But when we speak about water-based systems, the heat pump is not let's say the one that is on top, because there the boiler is the mandatory, or let's say the used solution. When we look for the use case of heat pump and knowing the technology, or looking to the technology of heat pump, we need to divide in the new building. That's a use case where the heat pump make sense. The house is let's say the technical requirements of the building are lower, because the quality of the construction are higher, of course. And this is not just in Portugal, but generally in all countries. And this allows the heat pump to be the system to be used. When we go, then the second use case in Portugal is the existing building. The quality of the construction of the buildings in Portugal they have some room for improvement, let's say it like that. If we look in the 20th century, definitely there was the construction quality is not the right one. Of course, this, if you use a heat pump, will require a quite demanding capacity from the heat pump that will make your investment not feasible. That's why one technical solution I would like to introduce is a hybrid solution. That is a heat pump combined with a boiler, for example. This allows you first to keep your existing system in the limit if you have already a boiler, or this allow to use the heat pump, and then the boiler will cover the extra requirement. Of course, this is it's quite expensive system, and for that, I think we will speak a bit later on that. We should at least raise the question that we need a policy of incentives in not only Portugal, but I believe around or across Europe. And this should come from the European Committee, I would say, centrally, and then deployed to the countries, to allow the consumers to move to this solution. Because without a strong push or strong incentives, we will always have a difficulty. And if we look for a lifetime of equipment, I would say 15 to 20 years. It's normally what is meaning in this decade. We need to take the right decision to be neutral in 2050. That is the target. Meaning, we need really a strong policy also in that area. Of course, based also on some knowledge about the technologies, what are the right system we should have. But this is something that maybe in at least will be one of my challenges to us and to the people that is listening us is. This is not just incentives. We also need. I want to buy a system. To whom I should go to do the right system? Is the installer trained enough to advise me the right? All these. Also, as a consumer, we need to have some policies of advertisement of the right products, and it's a big base. Nevertheless, Portugal, I will answer your question. New building, definitely pump. Buildings, existing buildings, heat pump with a boiler. Of course, a boiler will allow us later also in the direction of neutrality, use instead of fossil, we can use for example, hydrogen. That is also something that the country is already preparing, as we are aware here in Portugal.
To take a question from the audience, does any of your activities cover the use of flexibility, heat pumps plus thermal storage as a low-cost virtual battery to integrate more PV and wind energy? The question is from Thomas Walter.
There are some activities on that area, of course. It's still PV, it's quite connected, but it's not yet on a level that we can be somehow offering that.
Thank you. And then just to look a bit at the questions that the audience has already asked. So from Irapua Ribeiro, although we see large potential for industrial process heat demand supplied with solar energy in Portugal, the market still did not take off. What would you recommend to foster this development, seeing the strategic importance for the country? So how can Portugal take advantage of the potential for the industrial process and the heat demand?
If I may answer, maybe I'll start to try to answer. If we're thinking about direct integration of solar into, let's say, the industrial processes, this would be mainly solar thermal. So there are relatively few projects where you have the full integration of the solar thermal into industry. And definitely one of the problems we have, or one of the barriers we have identified, is precisely the small number of ongoing projects. So you need in a certain way also to have more a bigger number of these projects being implemented, so that then let's say the industrial players would be informed that such systems exist, that they have a very interesting, let's say, impact on your environmental impact within the industry, but also once you've installed the system, of course, it does take away from your costs in terms of fossil fuel use or previous fossil fuel use. So the systems that we have integrated is usually in the range of temperatures of up to 200 degrees Celsius. You can go you can go above that. But if you stay within those systems, basically up to a 200 degrees Celsius, you can integrate definitely as the question was addressed, basically integrating solar thermal with then thermal storage, so local thermal storage. And if you have also on top of that, let's say, an algorithm that allows you to operate the system in a way where you can predict when you will be using it, so basically how your process is timed, but also in terms of the availability of your solar resource. then it's really interesting because you can, of course, store it when you don't need it and then use it when you need it. And basically, this is how we've been implementing so far the project. So the one that's really integrated solar thermal plus storage, it's just one example for the time being in Portugal. So definitely lots of opportunities there to upscale this and have it in more applications. So we are now basically at the stage where we've implemented the system and a lot of data is being collected to just see in terms of then the operational costs, how does this actually work in terms of how does it really integrate with the process. So I would say at least two things are needed. So we need to upscale this. So we need to have more projects where solar thermal is being directly implemented in industrial processes, because as the question was, so basically the person that asked the question, there is a huge there's a huge market for this, and there is a huge need in terms of and opportunities also in terms of integrating renewables directly into the system. Also, then we need to spread the word, literally. So we need to have more events where we basically inform the different industrial sectors of that this solution is viable. And if we have already initially some costs that we can then, of course, share with the industry, then they would know, because one of the biggest problems is you need to pinpoint some costs, and when you need to pinpoint things in terms of how fast you recover your investment. And of course, then you can have also on the policy side some incentives to implement these types of solutions. And definitely also from the financial, so from financing that you might be able to obtain to actually implement these types of processes, so these types of systems. So I would say spread the word and build up, let's say, the whole support system behind implementing these systems, because the technology is already available and it has really interesting results.
We do our best with the events, especially now with online events that you can participate from anywhere. The next question I think is more for João, although I think you weren't tagged. Raul asks, I'd like to know the Portugal perspective on solar district heating and cooling for decarbonizing villages in the south of the country.
It's a good question. Well, district heating and cooling is always about matching the resource and the demand. So in southern Portugal, in Alentejo, for example, you have the resource.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you mute the microphone? Yeah, thank you. Go on, please.
Okay. So in southern Portugal, we have the resource. We have a lot of irradiation. We have a lot of solar energy. So you just need to find the places where the demand exists. And of course, a district heating and cooling system requires that you have some density in terms of use of energy, because you will need to build an infrastructure, a network of pipes. So of course, if you can find a place where you have some density of consumption, then of course you have the opportunity there. I would say, going a bit further, you can think about the use of thermal solar directly in a district heating or cooling, even cooling system. And you can also think about another thing which is quite interesting, which is to use the surplus of electricity, of renewable electricity. You know that in Portugal, at the moment, there are huge, tremendous investments planned in solar energy for power generation, also on a lot of capacity on wind energy. And we will start to have, in some moments, a surplus of the renewable electricity. So what you can do is, instead of trying to store that surplus electricity in batteries, which is expensive, you can do it by using district cooling, for example. You can convert this electricity into chilled water, and you can store chilled water, which is much cheaper than storing electricity. And then you can supply this chilled water to cool the buildings during the next days. So this is also an opportunity to integrate the electricity generation with the district heating and cooling systems in order to use the surplus of renewable electricity. So there are a lot of opportunities for the future, in fact.
And I would ask Pedro, how does electrification fit with the Portuguese reality? Because I think that would be a nice complement to what João was saying. You are muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. Well, when we look to electrification, and we just, the colleagues already explained it, we are definitely in the right direction. We already catch all the targets, we even are above that. We have several days, for example, in 2020, where the supply of energy was 100% renewable, or hydric, or wind, solar, and this definitely put us in, let's say, the perfect conditions to go in the direction that we are looking for all. And supporting what João just said, saying the same, we have the right things done, prepared, the country is definitely ready, and now it's just to take use of that.
Thank you, Pedro. For all the panelists, I would ask, what can other countries learn from Portugal based on the progress and the transition that you've all talked about? So what can other countries learn from Portugal? I would take Pedro first because his microphone is on.
Yes, sorry, I always forget. So by that I don't speak. Well, I think Portugal Portugal also needs to learn from the other countries, but definitely they can see from us this dynamic of moving forward to renewable energy sources. This is definitely, Portugal did a grand change in the last decade, and this is something that in some countries is still not in that direction. I think we are following definitely the Nordic countries. They are somehow the leading ones in Europe, as I would see. And this is a point where we can show it's also possible to be done. If you would like to see what we need to learn, I think you just ask what we can bring to the others, right? Okay, I would say like that. How we could manage to do it in a decade, I would say, this transformation.
João, what would you say that other countries can learn from Portugal?
Yes, I need to reinforce what Pedro has just said. So what we have to show as a good example is the transformation that we have made in the power generation sector within the last years. In fact, it started a long time ago with hydropower. Then it came the wind power, and now it's the solar power. And we have made a complete transformation of our electricity generation sector. And I think we are among the best in the world on that. So that's a good example. And on the other side, we have a lot to learn in other things. I think we'll speak about that afterwards. But really, on the power generation, we have made a good transformation. Yeah.
And then we talked about the gaps, so the gap in communication, the sometimes misleading information coming from politicians, the lack of incentives was touched upon by Pedro. What other gaps would you add, for example, political, technical, skill-wise? This question is for Zenaida. What gaps would you say are still missing?
This is in general terms, or for heating and cooling, or for renewable energy in Portugal, in let's say in the larger sense?
I would say in the larger sense, and then if you could mention renewable heating and cooling.
Okay, I would say one topic upon which you have just touched and we haven't yet is definitely the skills. So basically, this capacity building that still needs to happen. I think there is a huge gap still in the number of people we will need to actually change the system. So this goes all the way from the engineers that actually plan the systems down to, let's say, the installers themselves of these individual systems. And you can also think up to the local authorities or even national authorities. So there is a big skill gap that needs to be filled. And I would say it needs to be done very soon, because if we want to do the transformation in 10 years, we don't have a lot of time left. So we have to do it very, very, very soon. So in addition to that skills gap, I would say also there are certain areas where we need further research. And so investment in research is, of course, essential so that we can develop new solutions, test systems. So it's basically all in, we can cover all the TRLs. So from developing really new solutions at the very early TRLs up to, let's say, just having projects that have pilot installations, so that we can build this, let's say, communication system whereby we have a few installations that are already working. So we already have some numbers to share with the remaining, let's say, with the rest of the system and with the rest of society. And it also gives numbers so that the regulators and the policy implementers can actually have some background data that they can use so that they can shape their policy. So I would say that is also essential. Yeah, and I think I've pretty much covered at least the two topics I think that were missing. So basically research and implementation. I think there are a lot of research projects that have already at least advanced the TRL up to, let's say, the point where we can implement them in real systems. And I think there's a gap there still to be bridged. To have actual implementation, not in the sense of a commercial, of course, that's another step. So creating the markets after we've tested them, but at least having these pilot implementations, I think, would go a long way into helping implement new renewable systems. So if we're talking about cooling and heating specifically, I think there's a huge opportunity in industry. So there is the optimization, let's say, of the thermal systems and as you were saying, the recovery of this excess thermal energy, then reusing it within the industrial processes or for intersectoral symbiosis. So I think there's a huge gap there yet. So we have been mapping, and there are, of course, the obligatory or the compulsory audits that identify these opportunities. But then the next step, which is actually implementing solutions, is something that is missing. And it's missing both from the skill set that the industry needs, as well as then if you're talking about installing new systems and basically projecting them, is also missing.
Thank you, Zenaida. So when you start to think about it, there are some things missing. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Unfortunately, we are nearing the end. Now I know it seems very short, and most of these events seem very short, to be honest, once you take part in them. So usually what I do at the end would be to ask you for 3 things that you would like to see changed. And this kind of segues very well to what Zenaida was saying, because there are still a lot of gaps. There are a lot of gaps, maybe in skills, maybe in policy, maybe in the ways the things are communicated. So I would start with Anna and just ask, what would be the 3 things, the 3 main things, and you can put 4 if you want, that you would like to see improved or changed in Portugal in the next 10 years?
Thank you for the question. I would like to see more solar system using here in Portugal. And I think it's very important to use the solar energy, but not just photovoltaic. Solar thermal collector is very important to use here for cooling, for example, because when I explain this solution to my student about the solar energy to cooling, and also, solar energy or solar thermal collector is just for heating. No, it's possible for cooling. I would like to see more solar system, but not just a very big plant outside in different places of, for example, in south of Portugal. I would like to see more solar system integrated in the city. In Porto, okay, the weather is not very good, but it's better than German. Then here it's not possible to see a lot of. Now it's possible to see compared with 10 years ago, okay, because the policy was changed, and now it's mandatory the use of the solar thermal collector in new building or remodelation building, okay? But I would like to see more solar system, not just photovoltaic. When I say solar system is thermal and photovoltaic system, but not just to heat cooling for domestic hot water. I would like to see for other application. This, I hope, to have more, and like Zenaida say, it's very important to have more research about this area, more research about the solar storage or the storage system, and it's very important the connection between the university to the companies to have a very good solution for the old people, okay, for the city. Okay, this is my opinion about the future. I would like to see more in a few years.
Thank you, Anna. So the same question for João. What would be your three main things that you would like to see in the next 10 years happening in Portugal?
Okay, well, for sure, as I was speaking about DHC, for sure, more district heating and cooling projects in Portugal. And it just depends of awareness. That's the main barrier. It's awareness of people and mainly awareness of decision makers, both at central level, at the administration level, at local level, especially at local level, at cities. That's the barrier, to have awareness of people about this kind of technologies. Then, and going, well, Zenaida spoke about that, and I think it's a pity that we are not using the excess heat from industry that we can use. So that's, I think, something really urgent to do, to map our resources in terms of excess heat in industry, and to try to use it instead of burning gas to heat our houses. And the third, I would say, as I mentioned before, I think there's a lot to do in integrating the electricity generation sector with district heating and cooling, and to use, Pedro was saying that, I think it was Pedro that said that, we already have some days where we have more renewable electricity than what we can use. So we will have a surplus of electricity in the future, and we need to do something about that. And as I said before, trying to integrate the power generation with district heating and cooling, we may have an opportunity by storing energy under the form of chilled water to cool our houses. So it's three areas where I think there's a lot of opportunities to take advantage on the coming years.
Thanks, João. The same question to Pedro. We can't hear you, Pedro. So maybe some technical issues. Zenaida, the same question about the three things you would like to see in the next 10 years.
Well, speeding up the rate at which we are basically substituting our current system for a fully renewable system. So we don't have a lot of time. I would say by 2030, we have to be well along the way of decarbonizing at least the use of energy in final sectors such as the building sector. And I think there are a few options which could go a long way in terms of looking at where our sources of thermal energy are, looking at how to integrate more solar, which, as Anna was saying, well, it's all solar thermal, not just solar PV as we usually do. Looking at options to integrate thermal storage as well. So looking at this in a, let's say, in a urban sort of local systems, it would be really good to have to basically push forward the agenda there, because we tend to focus very much on installing PV and wind energy, and of course they have their role and they're really important. And we're very much looking now at decarbonizing via use of hydrogen, which once again also might have its and it has its important role in some sectors. But there are a lot of gaps in how we plan local systems that could benefit from some of these technologies that we discussed today. And of course, the potentially big role of heat pumps in the systems is also something to look forward to, and especially if we think about decarbonizing our final energy sectors, it also means a huge improvement in our environment in cities. So it means also that we have less pollution, and so that also contributes to the overall improvement of health in cities. Another topic that I discussed here that I think it really needs a really big push is in terms of skills. We need to build, let's say, the next generation of installers, the next generation of city planners, the next generation of engineers that are going to build all of these systems. I think we have a lot of knowledge, but it's not widespread. So you only get a small percentage of everyone that let's say goes through the cycle of going through university or going through technical courses, that actually then ends up being a small percentage of the overall workforce that's already informed within this let's say new paradigm. And of course, you need decision makers to also have the information they need to make decisions. And the last point would be, we've already also discussed here, is dissemination of good practices, dissemination of practical it goes through to the decision makers, it goes through the financial sector, and also that has already also a big gap there.
Thank you, Isabel.
I was blocked by the system, but now I'm back. If you want, I can also answer the three things.
Yes, please.
I'm sorry for that, but okay, this we cannot control. Just I would pick the comment from Anna. Portugal has also the right environment for a cooperation between companies and universities, and as here in Bosch, we have some consortium projects with the university, in this case Aveiro University, Braga, Bosch Braga as with Porto and the Universidade do Minho. That means this also gives that necessity of exchange knowledge between the academy and the scientists and also the industry. I think this is definitely the first note that we know the country will keep doing that, and this is great. Now, speaking about the topic about the renewals and the industries, I think we need to have definitely increase of awareness. The colleagues already mentioned. Installers, they need to also have some training programs. They need to understand all the technologies. What is the right technology for the use case? As said before, when I was speaking about the HP and HP combined with boilers, for example, or with district heating, whatever, that's different solutions. But also the consumers needs to have a awareness raising increase on the consumers. In the moment they are a bit lost, I would say, they do not know all the technologies, and definitely the decisions they are taking in the coming years will impact 2050 with the lifetime of the equipment we are buying. I would then, the second point I think it's important, definitely I also mentioned that, is a strong and consistent incentive program for these technologies. This is the only way we can move forward to the renewal. And the last point, it's also important our politicians and the governments needs to bring a clear target and timeline. And this is sometimes we keep speaking. We saw already in Portugal, we spoke about the power. We quickly answer, we quickly change, take actions, but we need to have really, it's time to have a plan. What are the targets? What is the timeline? And this will allow us to be stronger and fulfill the commitments on 2050. That's all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pedro. Thank you, everyone. Must apologize. We ran a bit over time. But I think the discussion was quite interesting. I thank again the speakers for agreeing to come to our event today. You saw their contact details, so you saw what companies they're working on as well as their bios. So feel free if you have any questions. I think they would be happy to answer them, and I see that they're already answering them directly in the chat. I also want to emphasize again that we will continue with these events, focusing on other countries that we haven't touched so far, and that the Renewable Heating and Cooling platform has a lot of opportunities and a lot of such things that are happening. Lastly, of course, I'd like to thank my team at EHPA, and again, we have a lot of events that are coming from our projects, that are coming from our policy team. So you can see now on your screen, again, you can just use your phone to scan that QR code. And the best way to keep in touch with this is just by following us on social media. You see, we post a lot of the events that we do there, so you can register very easily. And not to spoil it, but there are a lot of events that are coming up. We also host these events as recordings on our YouTube channel for basically forever, hopefully. And then you can find a lot more from our other communications channels. So from our weekly wrap-up, so our weekly newsletter, and on our website we have a tab that shows you the upcoming events as well. And some of them, although they're like 2-3 months in the future, you can already register and have them on your calendar. So again, a big thank you to everyone. A big thank you for attending this, and I wish you a very pleasant rest of the day.